Greetings everyone, Brett here with Hammerhead Model Making, and I am here with the final episode in the three-part series of Marine Corps helicopters that I have built. But before we get started with the commentary on this video, I do have a special shout out to a couple of viewers. I would like to say hi to Trent and his grandfather Kenny. Thank you for watching my videos, and I hope that you guys have some great modeling adventures together. All right, so today we are going to be working on the Kitty Hawk AH-1Z Viper. Now, this kit shares a lot of components with the previous helicopter I just built, the AH-1Y Venom. So I'm going to cut out a lot of parts of this video just because they would be almost a direct repeat from the previous video, and really just kind of focus on some of the things more specific to this build. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to start off by modifying the kit parts to accept the Eduard photo etch that I got for this kit. The detail in the kit actually isn't too bad out of the box, but I just wanted to kind of enhance things a little bit just because the cockpit would be so visible on this helicopter with that big, greenhouse of a canopy that it has. And so just wanted to make sure I could just add just that extra little level of detail in there. There is a lot of nice components that go into this specifically for some of the avionics and equipment behind the pilots, or behind the crew, that is. So it is pretty decent. And I don't necessarily think that the photo etch is necessary, but again, like I said, it just does add that next level to it. So here we're just going ahead and kind of getting some of the assembly done, getting the seats all put together. Rather straightforward. There was some slight fit issues with some of the smaller parts, not quite fitting into the slots and holes as designed. So you will have to do a little bit of drilling or reaming out of certain areas just to get things to fit correctly. Also be aware that the instrument panels are, so there's two parts. There's the instrument panel and kind of the shroud that goes over the instrument panel. And they are specific to the front and the back, so make sure you don't get them, switched over with each other, because they will make things not fit. So they are you have to be sure you're getting the correct pieces onto the correct front or back instrument panel. There was a little bit of photo etch that I added to the seat, or to the bottom of the cockpit there, just to help kind of enhance some of those details. So everything was primed in black, and we're just going to go ahead and get everything a nice dark gray color, just to kind of help create a little bit of tonal variation, because pretty much the entire cockpit is just black, and on its own that's kind of boring. So by using this really dark gray, I can actually create a little bit of contrast between just the floor and the tub of the cockpit, and then some of the actual instruments and avionic pieces that are in there. Just helps create a little bit of tonal difference there. So we did everything with the airbrush. Now we're going to come in with some Vallejo black paint just to kind of pick out some of these smaller details. I do find that with Vallejo brush paints that you do want to generally thin them a little bit. They can be rather thick directly out of the bottle, and I'm just using tap water to thin it. Nothing special or fancy, and that usually does the trick to get it to flow over a lot of those details and just give a nice, good, solid coat. So with everything painted, we can go ahead and add the photo etch. There was no real issues with the photo etch. It all fit as advertised, and looks pretty good. The screens are all, basically lit up and have almost pretty much somewhat legible information displayed on them. So they looked good. There are quite a few pieces to add in here for the instrument panels, but I think in the end it's totally worth it, and it really helps elevate the cockpit a lot. So just make sure all the photo etch is being secured with super glue. And so I apply a little bit of super glue, get the photo etch pieces on there, and it's usually solid within a couple seconds. Here we can get the seats added. Just like with the Venom, the photo etch seat belts went on with no problem. And, it was pretty straightforward. This, oddly enough, the Venom the actual Kitty Hawk Venom kit came with photo etch for the pilot and co-pilot seat, but none of the back seats. But for whatever reason, the Viper did not come with any of that photo etch. So it was kind of curious. It's interesting that one kit provides it, the other doesn't. But that's how it goes. So here we can kind of get the rest of the cockpit all assembled. all the smaller pieces, the control columns and cyclic and collective and all that stuff. Get that all added in there, really dress up that cockpit, make it look good. So once we get the cockpit done, we can start working on all the exterior stuff. And so just like the Venom, you are presented with the option of having open engine bays. And just like the Venom, the engine bays are actual structural components. And so even if you don't plan on actually having them open or displaying the actual engine itself, you do need to add the bays in there, just to help with fit alignment and all that stuff. And so here we got the two fuselage halves together, and we're just going to go ahead and get things clamped and secure so that we can get glue on it and get it all together. The fit of the fuselage halves was actually really nice. It does leave you with some annoying seam lines to have to clean up, especially over a lot of this detail on the underside. So just be aware that it will require some cleanup. Next thing I wanted to tackle was the chin-mounted gun. The kit basically just has the bottom blanked off. However, looking at reference pictures, every picture I saw showed that the actual turret was open. The actual gun mechanism inside was exposed. And so made the decision to remove the blanked off part and then scratch build some kind of gun mechanism in there. So we started off with some clippers, just kind of removing the bulk of the plastic, and then we switched to the knife to refine the removal a little bit and get it to a place where I think it's looking much better. So here we go. All that plastic's been removed. We can start actually detailing up the engine. So for this, I just basically rated all my spare parts for just things that I thought would look pretty similar to what the gun mechanism looks like. I wasn't able to find a lot of great reference pictures of what the actual mechanism looked like. I was usually looking at finding pictures from kind of a distance or from the side or something. So I'm really kind of interpreting this the best I can. But I think in the end, it really kind of it gives the idea that that's what it is. So here, just kind of adding in some of the mounts, essentially that the actual gun would be attached to, that will allow it to pivot up and down. Just checking the fit of all the parts, make sure I'm not running into problems with the back of that turret. Another addition we're doing is adding some master barrels to the gun. The kit barrels are okay. They would require a fair amount of work to actually make them look pretty decent. And so I think this master barrel set is really a necessary addition to make the guns look just top notch. There are a lot of parts to this, both photo etch and turned brass. And it was a little bit of a struggle to get everything together just because the parts are all so small and delicate. So just patience is the key here when getting this put together. Also making sure that you are working over an area where if you drop something, it's not going to roll off and become a victim to the carpet monster. And as you'll see in just a minute, like there are some really small parts in here, so you just have to be careful. But the detail is just phenomenal. Multiple folds, multiple layers of photo etch going into this. And a lot of this detail, honestly, wouldn't necessarily be directly seen unless you were really looking up close at the gun. But even from a distance, you can tell that the gun, that it is what it is. And it's not just a couple of plastic tubes sticking out the front. So here we are, I'm adding parts to one of the two, I guess you would call them collars that go around the barrels to keep them aligned. And multiple small parts on here, so I attached it to a little bit of blue tack just to allow me to actually work on it and hold it without, it going flying off. So here you have to slip it over the gun barrels. And that in itself was kind of tricky to get all three of these things lined up and then get the part on there. And then you just have to work on getting it slid down there to the right spot. And then I didn't actually secure it with glue just yet, just because there is one more of these little sleeve parts that has to go on. And in order to make sure that I could maintain the alignment, it was just easier not to glue it then. So basically at this point, we get all the parts aligned, and then I'll go in and start securing everything with super glue and ensuring the proper alignment. To finish off the gun barrel, there's just this tiny little piece of turned brass here that fits right in the middle. But in the end, this looks great, I think. And especially once it's on the actual helicopter. And just like with the Venom, I added some weight into the front of the helicopter just to make sure that it wasn't going to be a tail sitter, because that would just be unfortunate. There are two major weaknesses, in my opinion, to this kit. This is one of them, the intakes. They're just really ugly. There's big sink marks, big ejector pin marks. You can see the actual connecting pins from inside the intake, and it opens into a large gaping area where the first stage compressors would be on the turbines, and it just doesn't look good, and it would require a lot of work to make it look good. So ultimately I decided with the client that we could basically mitigate all that by adding FOD covers to the intakes. So I mixed up a little bit of green stuff, which is just a 2-part epoxy putty, and worked it in there to essentially create a FOD cover. And I think this is a genuinely good and easy way to get rid of troublesome areas like intakes that have issues with them, and especially if you don't want to take the time to actually correct it. It's definitely correctable, and it's definitely something you can do. It was just going to be a lot of work. With that done, we can move on to the rest of the assembly here. The engine covers did not fit great. They were definitely designed to be displayed open, not to be displayed closed. So you do have to do some trimming and careful gluing to get these all to align and fit together, but it is possible. You also get the option of having the avionics bays open as well. Obviously, we're not doing that in this case, but it's kind of a neat addition here. So moving on with the rest of the construction, here is the second major issue with this kit. The sensor that they have at the front of the helicopter is completely wrong. Even though on the actual box art it shows the correct configuration for the sensor. So in order to correct this, I decided to sand off all the detail, which is kind of scary at first because it is a very nice clear part, and replace it with these really cool color shifting holographic lenses. But in order to do it properly, you actually have to have flat facets where these parts would go. So I had to very carefully file down 3 flat facets onto the front of this little sensor ball. And it took a little while because I would have to constantly do a little bit of filing, check to make sure the profile was correct, a little bit more filing, and so on and so forth to get it right. And then once I got the major filing done, then come in with some finer grit sandpaper to really smooth it out and get rid of those sharp, deep file lines on there. But I think in the end, the effort's definitely worth it because this really helps correct a very large inaccuracy in the kit. And so because the holographic set comes with multiple copies, I was able to put some on just to make sure that it was going to look correct and fit correctly and was in the right orientation. And so that's why they're on there. I will remove those and replace them once everything is painted. And here we get to add in my little hammerhead decal inside one of the pylons, forever hidden, but you all know it's there now. The clear parts were another area where the designers of the kit clearly wanted you to display them open, and you actually have to do a fair amount of modifications to get them to fit in a closed position. Lots of filing and sanding along the edges to actually get them all to line up and sit correctly. So just be aware of that if you plan on doing it with the canopies closed. Just like the Venom, all of the photo etch just fit flawlessly and was amazing. So moving on to painting, the large portion of the painting is going to be similar to the Venom. We're hitting everything with this medium coat of medium gray from Tamiya, and getting a nice solid coat on there. Then we do the upper side portion of the helicopter with the dark sea gray. I did not film doing the upper portion of the camouflage, but that is what I did, and that's the color I used. This Viper is not going to be quite as colorful as the Venom, but nonetheless, it's going to have some really cool stuff going on with it. And it's a fairly common paint scheme with the Viper. You see it a lot, but there's a reason why. So this particular livery has the big shark's mouth on the front, and this is provided as a decal. However, I was really concerned about getting the decal to conform over a lot of different compound curves around the turret and the front of the helicopter. And so I ultimately decided I was going to paint it. So I masked off the general shape and painted the white area with the airbrush. This took a lot of tape and a lot of patience to get all the correct curves and make sure that everything was lined up. We're going to hit the tail here with some black. This is really the only other extra, big part of color on the helicopter was just the tail was painted black. But that was pretty simple to mask off and get that done. And then moving back to the shark's mouth, here we're going to start painting the teeth. So I had considered trying to cut out essentially stencils to airbrush the teeth, but I figured it would just be faster and easier to do it by hand. And so here's just kind of a little time lapse of how this went. So I'm just using a really fine point brush with very thin down Vallejo black paint. I wish I could describe exactly how thin this was, because it's not quite, liquid thin. Otherwise, it would just be flowing everywhere. But it's also not directly out of the bottle, so it's kind of something you have to learn to do by feel and experience. But I'm quite happy with how it turned out, and I think definitely it turns out much better than trying to get a decal to conform to all these crazy curves and corners and undercuts and things. That just would have been a headache. Plus, it preserves a lot of the nice rivet detail that's in that area. So we can remove the masking finally and reveal our nice new hand painted shark's mouth. So very pleased with it. I think it works. I think it looks the part, and really makes the Viper a nice aggressive looking helicopter. So now moving on to decaling, I did apply a coat of aqua gloss clear before doing the decals. So, that's pretty standard to my normal process, and you see it in the Venom video. This had, I would still say this is a fairly high-vis paint scheme, just not with a lot of color, but you still get a lot of the black markings, and it really kind of helps contrast against all the gray on the helicopter. So with all the decals down, we're going to hit everything with a little bit of Solvaset. This is my decal setting solution, and it works great on these Kitty Hawk decals. They really just snuggled down after just one coat and showed off all the lovely rivet detail. So after another coat of gloss, we hit it with the interior wash. So this kind of a brownish gray color. And again, like with the Venom and the Super Stallion before it, not going heavy with weathering, wanted to portray relatively clean aircraft, and so really the extent of weathering is confined to this panel wash here, which does help add a little bit of kind of grittiness and grime to the overall helicopter without necessarily, going overboard with it, like you would see on some helicopters that can get really, really filthy and dirty. But I think this worked out just great. So we remove everything with a paper towel and then kind of get to the more stubborn areas with some cotton buds to get that excess wash removed and cleaned up. So after a semi-gloss coat, we can start removing the masking. I did end up having a little bit of overspray on the inside of the canopy. Apparently there was just a little crack that some airbrush particles got into, so I had to pop off one of the side windows and get in there with a Q-tip, but nothing that a tiny little bit of rubbing alcohol couldn't take care of and clean up. So pretty pleased overall. The clear parts that Kitty Hawk provides are very clear. Pretty much crystal clear. There's very little distortion, so you're able to really show off all that great detail in the cockpit. And so now we can kind of start finishing up all of our constructions. So we get the pylons added here, which fit nice and snug. We can finally add the holographic lenses here for the sensor pod on the front. It was important to make sure that these are all aligned correctly, because they have curved areas and then flat areas or straight areas, and they all line up in this very specific way. I just really like the color shift aspect of this. Really neat, kind of helps add a little bit of color to the overall build, but when it's actually sitting down, it's not nearly as noticeable. So I think it's just great. So here we can add the gun barrels, which really helps kind of show off that nice shark's mouth on the front there, and really happy with how that turned out. And we can continue on with the rest of the armament. So we got Hellfire missiles here, rocket pods going on, and one of the things I love about this kit, or about this helicopter, is it's got sidewinders, and it's funny how big they look on the helicopter. compared to how they would look on, you know, a standard fighter jet or whatever. So finally, we can add some photo etch removable for flight tags here to the FOD covers to wrap up our build. So I hope you enjoyed this, and like I said, there's a lot of commonality with the Venom, so if there's something you feel like you're missing here, it's probably in the Venom video. And here is our completed Viper. Again, like the Venom, this kit has pros and it has cons. In 1/48 scale, it's the only Viper available to you. So if you're really dead set on building a Viper in 1/48 scale, this is the only way to go if you can get a hold of one of these kits, since Kitty Hawk is now out of production. I've heard a lot of horror stories about the kit, and there were some aspects of it that are true, but I think you can still be built up into a presentable looking model. So I really had fun with this one, and this wraps up my 3-part video series on these helicopters. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give me a hit that like button or subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and leave me a comment down below. I really like interacting with you. Let me know what you thought of the video, of the build. If you have questions or just want to shoot the breeze, I'm good. So thanks again. Special shout out to my Patreons as well for helping support the channel and make content like this possible. We'll see you on the next video. Take care.